And I have a story about that discipline in the classroom in South Korea is similar to what you've described to me.
And same in Taiwan.
In Taiwan. And at one point I was teaching some 12, 13-year-old Korean boys who were coming to Canada to go to high school, to a Canadian high school. And I had a whole class full of them, 12 and 13-year-old boys. And one day I took them to a museum to look at the things in the museum, and one boy pulled the fire alarm and set off the fire alarm, and the fire trucks came, and I was very angry with him. I was embarrassed, and I was very angry with him. And I took them all back to the school, and I said, I'm giving you a detention. So one of the ways that high school teachers can discipline their children or their students is to make them stay after school and for a period of time, and either they do their homework or something, but it's not a fun time. And so I said, I'm going to give you a detention for what you did, and all of you, because you're all involved. And they got very upset with me, and they said, no, don't give us detentions. Why can't you just beat us? Like hit us. And I said, believe me, I would like to, but if I did that, they would throw me in jail. So that was an example of they wanted the kind of discipline that was immediate and maybe painful, but it was over, rather than having to sit there for an hour. But in the college classroom, what I do is in the first days, together we decide what is acceptable behavior in the classroom, so that they too are involved in setting the rules. So it's not me saying, okay, you can't do this, you can't do that, you can't do that, but saying, okay, for us all to be able to learn and feel safe in this classroom, what rules do we need? And then I put them up on the board or up on a sheet of paper on the wall. And if someone breaks that rule, whether it's interrupting someone or texting or talking on their cell phone, usually the students themselves will say, hey, we have a rule about that, you can't do that. So I usually don't have too many behavioral problems. Now in the high schools, I'm sure it's different, but the basic rule is you cannot touch a student in anger or in punishment. So it's a very different system. And our children, I think, learn from this time they start school, what is acceptable and what is not.
The rules are very different from here. We would never be allowed to touch a person, never be allowed to strike a person, never be allowed to use corporal punishment in any way. Typically in the classroom, the teacher is responsible for the discipline. And the classroom management, I've done many workshops on it, and I always suggest that the teacher in a Canadian or American classroom should not go from crisis to crisis, but rather should proactively prepare for classroom management. So one of the things I would suggest is that teachers get together and discuss incidents in the classroom. And then teachers decide what are the very serious incidents, and then they decide how should we intervene. So rather than just jumping from a crisis, they sit down together and decide what is a critical incident and how do we intervene. For example, a critical incident might be texting in the classroom. How serious is that? Let's say on a scale of 1 to 7. 1 being not serious, 7 being very serious. So the teachers might decide that texting in the classroom is a 5 or 6. It's serious, but not that serious. Then the teachers would decide, well, how do you intervene? What do you do about texting? Do you make a blanket rule, no texting? Do you make a blank rule, all iPhones at the front? So how do you do that? So we might take another incident, like, for example, one student hitting another student. I would say that's very, very serious. So texting might be medium serious, another student hitting another student, very, very serious. So how do you rank that, and what do you do? That would not be allowed in Canada. You would not. When I was a student in lower grades, yes, if you misbehaved, the teacher might, they would never slap you, but they would give you the strap. So the strap was a piece of leather like so, and you had to go up to the front, and the teacher would slap your hand. And I never got the strap. I was a good boy, but people were given the strap, and one of the problems is that the emotional effects of getting that are so unpredictable, are so idiosyncratic, that some people may respond to it and not do it again, and some people may be so deeply hurt that they just don't learn.
I think that's a really misguided thing to do. I think that is a much worse crime than smoking, sneaking a cigarette on campus. I believe in educating students about the effects of their behavior rather than punishing innocent students. That just makes you resent authority, resent the power, and I think it's counterproductive. I don't think you get the behavior that you want, and it also teaches kids not to be honest.